look, this is an exciting year for 80s nerds like myself. We're at the 40th anniversary now for things that happened in 1985, and of course that includes the Goonies, a movie that was instantly a classic. And we're gonna as I introduced and everyone heard already, I teased. It played an important role in keeping that alive. Um, what is your experience with the Goonies? Did you see it when you were? Have you seen it at all? I don't want to presume.
Of course, yeah. It is a classic and it continues to build momentum. I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't know this. My history is I was born in 1980, so I dovetail really nicely into this. And I have a lot of fond memories growing up as a kid, 5 years, six, probably about 6 years old. And the movie playing on cable. And with my neighbor one block down, we spent a lot of time together watching it on, I forget what channels were running it over and over and
Yeah.
over again. But we also played this video game, Goonies 2, on Nintendo.
Right.
And
Yes.
do you remember? It was pretty much a terrible
Yeah,
game.
it was a bad game. Yes.
And I think my best friend at the time, I think he had like 3 games, but Goonies 2 was like matched with the actual movie. And so what we would do is we would watch the movie and then we would play Goonies 2 and we could like continue that storytelling. So I have so many memories of the movie, but I also have memories of just made up storylines as a kid with my best friend because we would play the Nintendo game and then we would go out in the backyard and we would play. So it was it's a very rich, multi-layered memory of the movie. I had no idea though, I will say this, that so many other people connected to this movie until I started this project.
Right. Yeah, and I'm wondering if it. That's fantastic, by the way. My friend and I had a similar experience with Blade Runner, where we would act
Yeah.
out stuff after it, and it was a little darker, maybe than the role playing you guys did. But I'm wondering if Goonies still would appeal rather to someone that's older, a Gen Xer now. And I'll give you an example. My co-host, who's 56 years old, has never seen it and
Yeah.
refuses to see it because he's afraid it can't possibly live up to the hype because he's not of the age where he would most relate to the characters. Thoughts?
It's interesting. I have found now that I have crowdsourced probably every corner of what Goonies has touched. Not just fans, but actually the creators from the original film. And I will say that it boils down to this, in my opinion. There are 2 types of people. There are the people that love this movie, and then there are people that have never seen it.
Mm.
There is nobody that doesn't like it. That doesn't exist, or at least I haven't found a marginal percentage of population that doesn't like the movie. I've never seen it, and I absolutely love it, and I'm a super fan. That is
Mm.
truly it. So God bless him. He fits in that category. He can proudly wave that flag. I do recommend he watches it. It's
Yep.
pretty darn good. And from like a timeless perspective, I've heard this I've heard this analogy been used a few times, and I would like to hear your thoughts. But Goonies is probably been talked about as the sort of like new Wizard of Oz.
Mm.
Does it hold up in a timeless storytelling? Is the 80s pollutant enough to be like a genre, or is it timeless and does that story just transcend all genres? I sort of think that it does. I sort of think it can be extremely timeless. It is an adventure story for neighborhood kids growing up, and I don't think that that's so dependent on being 80s.
Mhm.
Even Cyndi Lauper, I mean, it's what we think of as 80s now might just be timeless in a few more decades. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I agree with you. I mean, that is the crux of our show. That there's some enduring power of it in 1980s pop culture that extends, I think, beyond nostalgia. And I was just chatting with a couple of folks. They're the two composers of the Cobra Kai TV show a couple of weeks ago, and they had, we were getting into this idea. Why? Why is that so? I don't know. I don't know. There's some sort of alchemy there, that went on that made these things sort of magical and appeal to generations after.
I have been asking myself this for the last probably 9 months on this project. Why did this movie connect with so many people? And I have my own assumptions and I have my own guesses now, been through the process. I did renovate the Goonies house. I did transform it back to the way it was exactly in the movie. When you walk into the house, every detail is there. And I would say that the top of the movie does start with a very relatable middle income story of being not in a city, not very unique, but pretty relatable to a general neighborhood. And I think that it's in the details, and I think that it's in these flaws that so many of the Goonie community connects immediately. And it's not that they were told to connect, is that they felt that connection. And I think that it is environmental and tonal. And I do believe it comes from some of those, I don't know, distressed, weathered details that
Hmm.
were in the space that people just relate to. And I think it ultimately comes down to the relatability of that texture, of that environment that makes people connect. That's my thought. That's my
Interesting.
my wager.
Yeah. So I certainly would concede that at its simplest, it's the hero's journey. But more than that, it appeals to kids and everybody because it's that idea that, like the hero's journey, we all want to imagine we're meant for something bigger and that we can take that adventure to become that. And
And that you are them.
yeah.
Like growing up, I wasn't. Growing up, I was actually repulsed by Mikey Walsh. He was not my favorite. Data was my favorite. Data was an introvert, couldn't speak, couldn't connect to his group, but found it through toys and little inventions. And I always wanted to be clever like him. And then when I did the project, I found more relatability in Mikey. But ultimately, like I feel like it's the hero's journey, but Goonies community and the Goonies and our generation, you and I, we connected to all the different archetypes
Yeah.
as those kids.
Yeah. So taking a step back, obviously, you've worked on a number of different projects, productions. How is it that so the house for folks we talked about it on when it happened that a gentleman named Behman Zakeri purchased the home a few years ago. How is it that he found you, or could even suspect that you'd be the right person for this job? As it turns out,
Oh, how funny. I mean, it's such an interesting sort of circumstance. It is. Some may just ask, like, ask, like, how did you guys start dating? Where did you meet? Like, ultimately, sometimes you're just wonder, like, is this the right story? We met on Tinder. I mean, no, no.
yeah.
So I guess you can look it up on YouTube. This guy, Behman Zakeri, he's a love. He is from Kansas City, and he bought the Goonies house. He's been on several news outlets about the story about how he bought it. But basically, he's a super fan. He likes the movie, and he is a trading card collector, among a few other entrepreneurial things. And he would normally never usually bump into me. I'm a gay dad in Hollywood, a set design. I have a design studio here, and I'm responsible for a lot of unscripted television. I do a lot of other genres, but most of my bread and butter is in things like competition stage, etc. And I think when he bought the house, he had a dream to renovate it back to the way it was. He talked to several others, I've learned, about what their dream would be to the house. And his dream was unique. He wanted to renovate it back to the way it was in the movie. And that's cool. And I think he needed a pro. I think that he tried, is what I'm trying to say. And
Oh,
he
okay.
couldn't. It's really hard. Turns out when you really freeze the frame on the movie, there's a lot of stuff in the house. And so ultimately he just started looking for a production designer. And I think that's really innovative thinking. He got connected with a friend of mine who I work with occasionally, coincidentally outside this window, across the street with a production company I work with all the time. And he had met them, not sure exactly the backstory there, but they recommended me, and I was basically his first interview. And I will tell you this: I did not seek him. I think I've heard him say that I sought him. The truth is, I will correct him. We had an interview, and we connected immediately. I mean, the moment I heard about the opportunity, I was like, internally, I was like, yes, we're doing it. There's no, I don't care what the budget is. I'm going to do this. And the moment I found his energy just spouting out just kind of different lines from the movie, like in his normal speech, I'm telling you, like in his conversational language, he was saying lines from the movie and I was regurgitating them back. Like I knew all the ice cream flavors for the scene with Chunk. We
Right.
just hit it off, and right from there, we started a process, and it went a really long time, and it spanned over a few years. And
Oh,
yeah, it'll be 2 years completely in July next month. And so yeah, and so we went on a journey together, and he is a wonderful, charming, energetic soul, and I'm proud to know him and be friends with him.
yeah. And so, you mentioned he's a huge Goonies fan. It's so wonderful that you are too, to have
Yeah.
that, the sort of, I don't know, it's
Well,
more
I
heart.
didn't know how big of a fan base it had.
Yeah.
I am ignorant to that, but it is a huge fan base. And I would say I was probably down in the lower middle. I mean, I know the movie, I had it on in background in college. I have a story as my childhood. And I know the lines, but then when you start to scrape the surface of it,
Mhm.
there's a community.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you teased a little bit about the process, including, when you freeze a frame on a screen. Can you give us an idea of, is that what it is? You're printing out a bunch of screen grabs and then tasking folks to find certain things, and it's just a loop, a process that sort of repeat?
Sure. I mean, that's sort of how it worked for this, because we knew the destination. We knew the goal was is to recreate the inside. So where we started was the movie, and so we did. We printed out every single screenshot from the first 20 minutes of the movie, which is the house, and capture all the angles of the house. We did that in the 4K version, and we scrubbed our little sliders to make sure that we got the right brightness and contrast. We ended up with a chunky book, probably 3 inches of screenshots.
Wow.
Then we watched the movie again just so we could see it in 3 dimensions. What I'm talking about is a research phase of design, or researching to get to that destination. And then from there is a fair amount of design. We drew, we elevated and created plans of what the house was. These didn't exist. We tried. I looked everywhere. I called art directors and set decorators and creators. Where are the plans for the house? Could not find them. So we redrew the house and elevated it just to build out what we needed to do. And then from there, you kind of, my design studio does this all day, every day across a lot of projects a year. And so then you make a process and you make a team and you build spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets, and you identify what you need to do, and then you prioritize them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you start to infiltrate. And yes, that does require in this project crowdsourcing, asking people, shamelessly
Mm.
going to any outlet, any corner to find the right and most accurate element.
And are there things at that point, something you can't find? You just recreate as a prop master. You're just recreating these types of things. That
There was quite a few elements that we could not get to, for so many different reasons, and I'll just leave it at that. Some things, oh my God, so many different stories, and some things you just couldn't find, because you have to remember it was made in 1984. This is general knowledge, and the movie premiered in 1985. It's a story about the Walsh family residents, and they are middle income people from the Goondocks, maybe middle to lower class income people.
sure.
Remember, she's moving because they're selling the house for a golf course. He's a museum curator. I don't know what they made back then. Not a lot. So they probably had hand-me-downs. This house maybe have been through in their family for a while. Most of the stuff was probably from the 70s, maybe before that, 50s and 60s. So
Right.
now we're talking about 75-year-old bits and bobs. So
Right.
yes, couldn't find these things. So yes, we recreated them exactly as we could, with the right finishes, with the right materials that they used back then to get right.
Is all right. Everyone's going to want to know this, right? Is the statue that Chunk breaks in there? And part B of this question is he pointing north or south? You know what I'm talking about, James.
I do. I do. And you're not the first person to ask this
Okay.
question.
Mhm.
And it is well, it's not my mother's favorite piece. It's Mikey's mother's favorite piece. He wouldn't be there if it wasn't.
Yep.
It is. It is there. And we did choose a moment in time
Okay.
to put the piece back, and we couldn't decide. So I really tried to figure out what direction it should go. And when we release photos and when we release how this goes, because I captured everything, I'm going to show you which way. But I will say it
Okay.
is the most accurate statue and piece that it
Wow.
gets.
Well, maybe it's not too late to have a suggestion. It rotates. You can go up, you can put it back down.
Be
Something to
great if it
consider.
could come out and,
Yeah, magnets.
switch around. That would, yeah, correct. The
Okay.
truth is in the movie there were a handful of these statues made actually as a prop, and we we had access to some of them, so we
Wow.
really observed how they were made and what proportions they were. So
No kidding. That's
yeah.
fantastic. As a fan, or not even as a fan, maybe as a fan. I'm imagining slowly over time, you're painting, you're putting putting carpet over the wood floors, you're putting pieces on shelves. At what point does it start to feel like, oh no, I'm in the Walsh's house? Is it just surprise you like at just, by the end there, or is it, or maybe you don't even notice it because it's such a slow process?
Oh, the moment I started painting the trim, I
Mm.
told Behman, I was like, this is very special. I would recommend you don't come in until we're done. I'm just telling you that now. It's your house. You ultimately do it if you want. You're the client, whatever. But I can tell that this is going to be good. You can talk to several people. There were probably about 50 or so that came into the house over Goonies weekend a couple weeks ago. They had VIP tickets, etc. I was in there. There was a photographer taking photos of people in there because they were very exclusive about the photos at the moment. So they kept the photos to be released. And the photographer told me every tour someone has cried. And
Wow.
to be honest with you, like the way it's touched people, not the house, but the movie, is
Sure.
wildly. It gives me chills. Wildly amazing, just to hear some of the stories and talk to the fans. And it's not about the house, but it's about transporting them back to that childhood memory of watching and then being in that space that gives them those tingles too. And so it was
Right.
able to do that. Yeah. So yes, the moment I started painting the trim, long story short, I saw that you could see the tonality immediately. You could see it right there. It was almost as if Mr. and Mrs. Walsh just smoked. I don't know why. Like everything was just like that sort of off-white shade of color, and you could see the movie right there and then before you put the coffee table down.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's funny. You almost describe how we remember the '70s and '80s. Kind of, people most oftentimes think of the '80s as fluorescent, everything's neon, but so much of it was still a carryover from the '70s. So it was muted colors and brown and orange. Our house was very brown
Very
when I was a
harvest
kid.
in a way, like harvest tones.
Hmm.
And you can look this up too. They shot it in November 1984, so not just the 70s were there, but there was there was just a sense of autumn.
Hmm. It's really unique, right? That the fact that they didn't shoot it on a set, they did find a place that they were able to get access to. I don't know if they rented it or was abandoned or empty at the time. And then it would still be there today. I can't imagine there's many other locations like that.
I mean, there are so many. There are so many. There are probably a couple documentaries about film houses. Like there's the Twilight House, Short Circuit House. There's a few of these things. Not just rattling them off Oregon ones off the top of my head, but there are like probably a dozen or so of these like famous homes that were shot in locations, and for some reason this film connected to a fan base. And I would say Goonies is probably the king. It really is sort of the one people make pilgrimages to,
Hmm.
and they see, and that's over the course of decades, been through transformations, been through homeowners, and still maintains that power and that allure. Yeah, it's amazing. It's special.
You mentioned getting all these screen grabs. We don't see the whole house. Did you renovate the whole house?
You don't see the whole
Or
house. You don't see all of the areas of each room. Ultimately, like
right.
you think when you're watching it, you are. I mean, you think when you're watching it, you kind of know the layout. The moment I saw the house, way before I touched it, Bayman invited me up to see it. Um, I knew it because I knew it without even looking basically at the movie again. Like
Hmm.
how data enters, right? He crashes through the screen door, duh. Mouth raps on that door, on that other door, on it across the living room. You know how they all get in. So you can tell, but coincidentally, if you're a psycho like me, there are areas of these rooms that you just don't see. And yeah, there are holes, which is precious IP territory for a production designer to fill. Um, and it was a real challenge for me to fill, and it was a real amount of pressure. I mean, what do you do? Yeah, and at that point, what do you do? What story do you tell?
Mm-hmm. And I imagine you're like you suggested what you had imagined as far as the Walshes being hand me down, their different occupations, the interest that we learned from the boys may have played into that.
Right? Is this the Walsh House or is this the Goonies film house? What, that was the starting point question to ask. I did what? How do you do that? Like, where did the cameras go to shoot Mikey's bedroom? Is the question.
Mm.
Do we leave room there, or do we make it a bedroom and fill it up? As a production designer, I'm obsessed with storytelling, and learning characters to tell a story. Yes, it's the Walsh home. Yes, it's going to be sold to Troy's dad to turn into a golf course. I hope they turn it to a sand trap and never get their balls out. Yes, all these things exist. But as a designer, what do you do with that? Where do you fill that in? And I did.
That sounds exciting. Like having an empty part of the canvas left for you. But
Yeah,
I can understand the pressure as you're suggesting.
my favorite part, and I hope someday people really appreciate what we did in those areas, because that was my favorite part to do.
I love how you're teasing this in such a way that we're just have to make the trip. We just have to make the trip to see these different things that you're.
I'm teasing it because there is a release ultimately
Okay.
of what it looks like, and
Very good.
I can give that. I can give that when they tell me I can. Again, it's not my house. I just designed it. I definitely know all about it. I definitely am the expert of it. But I will say, when I'm told I can release that information, I can. And until then, I will just tease it and tell you that these are questions. I have the answers, and I can't wait to share them.
Fair enough. I want to make the trip.
You should.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And when you look at the outside of the house, it comes back, and the Rube Goldberg machine is there.